How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk, also known as AfroDJMac, and I'm here with Nuno Santos of Imaginando. And I think I said it wrong already. How do you say that?
I would say Imaginando.
Imaginando. Okay, so um, it's. I feel like I've said this so far on every episode now, but it is really nice to finally talk to you, sort of face to face over the internet here, because we've been back and forth about a few different things over the last. I think we figured out 3 years or so.
Or more.
Yeah, so it is great to speak to you, and
Yeah, me
welcome,
too.
welcome to the show.
Thank you for your invitation, Brian.
Yeah, I was definitely happy to get a chance to sit down with you. You're doing a lot of cool work with your apps online, and there's even the Harpa Laser, which I'm gonna have to ask you about soon. And so definitely, you're doing some cool stuff. And I guess your most recent thing is the DRC.
Yeah.
This is an analog modeled synthesizer. Would you say?
Yeah, we call it a virtual analog polyphonic
Mm.
synthesizer.
Okay.
And it has a huge story behind it because, the guy who I have made this synthesizer with is the person who has basically shown me electronic music production like 20, almost 20 years ago.
Oh wow.
Um, so he was already working with Fast Tracker and things like early times, Rebirth from Propeller Heads, and and then Reason. So basically, by that time, I was already passionate about computers, and seeing a computer making music for me it was like, whoa, what is this? I want to know how to write a program that makes music as well. So I had this huge dream of one day being able to write a program on the computer that could do or achieve the same thing. um, and and in this case life has separated us a bit because we went to study in different places. We um, and after a long time, when both had completed their studies and educational formation, we find ourselves. Uh, what about the synthesizer? Let's make a synthesizer. I was already doing the controlling apps
Hmm.
for Ableton Live and Tractor, and this only became possible like 2 years ago, when I finally quit my daytime job to found Imaginando and strive for these goals.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Congratulations on that, by the way. Quitting the daytime job. Um, how was that a bit of a leap of faith for you? That moment where you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm jumping in all the way.
Not really. I skipped a lot of things in between. Um, well, I when I start to s- when I got from high school out or out from high school, I went to university, and I was not aligned with the university world. So
Hmm.
I needed to do something else. By that time, I was 19, and I went to the UK to work on the crops and fields, and I spent like 3 or 4 months there working, and that experience has completely changed my life. So when I got back, I just wanted to make things happen. Well, this is a long journey, or it was the start of a huge journey, because I still had to make my graduation on informatics. I spent almost 7 years graduating myself in informatics and computer science. And when I left the university, I started working on a small company, and then I went to a bigger one after a year or so. In that company, I had the um, I could do something meaningful. I I was in a company that was doing like interactive stuff. The touch screens were starting to appear. Even it was before the iPhone fever. It
Uh-huh.
was like in 2007,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
they were doing like big touch screens on window shops. And by that time, my colleagues uh, were were saying that was possible to create a multi-touch technology, um, and and basically we have done a multi-touch technology from the scratch, like three guys
Wow.
who we have created a new technology from the scratch in a small company, in a small city, with little resources,
Mm-hmm.
doing very low level stuff like uh, the electronics, um, talking with the device, processing all that stuff inside the Windows kernel. Well, we were doing magic, and after like 3 years, the product was on the market, and it started to have a huge success because it was unique. Well, after 2 years, like at my fifth year in that company, I was starting to get myself bored, because even that I have achieved a lot of things in there, um, I had this creative side that was not being fed. So um, beside my day job, I was DJing and producing music, and for me, music meant much more than that that daily routine that was becoming every day the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So by that time, I was doing a lot of things as with music. I was DJing a lot. Mostly breaks. I love breaks, and by that time, a lot of dubstep was coming to the market, and I was doing some cool things with my friends. So I basically tried to make something I was trying to do for a long time, like doing an Ableton Live controller on my own, and I started to experiment some things. And with a small prototype, I have made my first live control version.
Mm-hmm.
While I was still working at that company. So
Oh, nice. So that was like by the midnight oil kind of deal during the
so
time
what?
off.
Midnight Oil?
Yeah, like basically like after work project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
And
cool.
it was growing. It was growing because I was seeing that on the market and people giving feedback, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to do it better. I wanted to do it more features. I wanted to have well. Um, I think once you have something that is created by you, you start to have much more love about it.
Yeah.
So it was curious because everything that I learned with that small company, like um, mostly understanding that it is possible. You should not be afraid of being small, because it is possible, and you just need to do it. Um, I saw that it was possible for a small thing to appear in the market and get a cut of. So
Hmm.
I was
So,
working on that app, and I was trying to make it bigger, and things were doing fine, because I was almost doing I was getting a nice revenue from it, until the point I said to myself, well, maybe it's now the time to jump off and try to put this um, as my dream come true, you know.
yeah, that's a cool moment. I'm always kind of fascinated by that that time when you like say maybe this is the time, to jump in, head first. And I imagine that's got to be a lot of soul searching, a lot of back and forth in your head, um, bit of nervousness, all kinds of emotions must be attached to that.
Yeah, that there was a lot of fear, because
Yeah.
humans love to feel comfortable, and I was
Mm-hmm.
comfortable at that time. I was secure. I had my payroll from the company, and I had some nice revenue from the apps. Uh, but I wasn't able to do the click, because I was scared. And if things go wrong, well, but by that time I was living for months in a in a well, I don't know how to say this, but divided. I was completely divided. Should I stay or should I go? And it was my girlfriend who gave me the strength to jump off and fight for my dreams.
Oh, that's great.
And looking back, I don't regret a single day.
Hmm. Well, I think that's brave of you, and the fact that you had something comfortable and sounds like a pretty good job with at your daytime job with that company. Although I guess you said you found a bit boring after a while because it was repetitive, but still it's comfortable, and that's a hard thing to give up. And it's nice that you had that support, from your girlfriend to say, "Hey, it's okay. I believe in you." When I'm sure that that decision is filled with a lot of questions, a bit of self doubt, and like you said, fear. But it's nice to have someone that says, "Let's do it." Very cool.
Yeah, it was.
S It sounds like you went from a pretty drastic change too, from in the UK working with crops, manual labor, that kind of in the fields, then into computer science.
Well, I had some great experiences. Well, when I was in high school, I started to smoke some spliffs and, well, taking some ecstasy and LSD, and by the end, I finished graduation. I wasn't properly prepared to go into algebra again in the university,
Yeah.
and it was curious, because when I got to university, I met a person who was special in some. It was like the brothers of my brother's best friend. It that I didn't knew him, but it seems like I had knew him for a long long time. So, and he was doing some work on the UK to save some money to then go around the world, and that fascinated me.
Yeah.
I wanted to know the world as well, so I kind of uh, felt secure to go along with him, and he was the trigger for this trip, because otherwise I probably have never went. Sorry if my English is not understandable
No,
sometimes.
very understandable. Yeah, that's great actually.
It's very difficult for me to formulate some sentences. But yeah, by that time, I went to meet him in Cambridge,
Hmm.
and I spent like 3 months working on very hard, like starting the day at 5 o'clock, and 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 getting back and at the end of the day completely wasted. Sometimes I didn't have strength to cook. I would just uh, pick up an egg and swallow it and go to sleep. Um, but it was probably the best experience in my life, because it gave me a completely different perspective of my life. After 3 months, I went to Amsterdam. It was my second. Uh, it was my second trip inside the trip.
Hmm.
We me and a couple of Portuguese I met there. We went to Amsterdam to finally see how is the world with legal pot, and it was really nice. It was like 4 months unforgettable. And when I came back, I asked for a course transfer, and I finally got into informatics, because when I got into the university, mm, I didn't have the enough, I would say, grades to get in my first option, which was computer science. So I was in my second option, and when I got back from this journey, I asked transfer, and finally got into the first option. Uh, and then I took, well, I wasted 1 year in with this adventure, and then I had then 6 next years taking the course.
Wow. So I guess this whole idea of like, you come out of college, I'm sorry, high school, then you go into university and college is sort of, at least here in America, I'm not sure in Portugal if it's exactly the same, but it's almost like this expectation that the kids are given. Like, like the kids I teach in high school, they're pretty much just, it's almost a given that you're going to go to college. And it doesn't really account for the fact that it's not for everybody, and it's not and sometimes it's just not for you right now in your life. And it sounds like your experiences, going to this different kind of work, and you said in the UK, and then your trip to Amsterdam kind of gave you like this like reset to just sort of see a different way of living, get your feet wet in that, and then realize like now you're ready to move on with the studying. Sounds like an important step in a
For me, it
little
was.
self discovery there.
Yeah, I was very open to this kind of new things. The people in general are very um, well. I don't know how to say this, but most of the people I knew, they were comfortable in their own life, repetitive life.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the people I knew when I was young, they are now doing the same because they had no chance. So they
Hmm.
had no employment here, and they were obligated to run or to search for opportunities. By that time, I didn't had to, but I wanted to go. So uh, very little people, very little few people. I think they have this kind of um, um, will.
Yeah.
Well, that because everyone says to them that it is normal. You're going to leave the high school, and then you go to college, and then you go to work. But if you question yourself, is this what you want to do? Do you want to spend 15 years studying without having a stop? I think everyone should have a stop, a 1 year stop, because that would give people's new uh, um, vision over their life. Having
Yeah.
a moment like an introspective moment, and feel the difficulties of working. When one thing I felt, and that was the for me the click for I don't want to work more. In this case, in the UK, was the fact that we were in the middle of the fields, uh, and they were spraying the field like right next to us. The tractor passing by and spreading shit, and we were working like 5 meters away.
We're talking like pesticides and
Yeah,
things like that.
it
Okay.
was. I think it wasn't water. Otherwise,
Hmm.
they wouldn't use the tractor.
Yeah.
And that made me feel like we are being treated as rubbish.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Like it's
that
okay
was
to just kind
my
of
give
shoot you
up
with that
goal
poison.
on working on fields.
Yeah. Right. So you're just kind of getting shot with poison too.
Yeah. So I by that time I decided I want to go back and study and have my graduation. But now I had the strength to do it and the motivation, because I didn't want to end in shitty jobs. It was not a shitty job in the sense is that I learned a lot with that experience, but I won't do that thing for the entire life. It's
Yeah.
impossible.
Well, I guess your point about taking the year off for some self discovery and introspection. It gives you a chance to just stop and not just be in this constant like conveyor belt movement where you're just going from one thing to the
Yeah,
next. And
precisely.
you know it's very easy to get, okay, I'm out of high school, now I'm going to college, now I'm getting my job, now I'm having my family, now I'm growing, and next thing you know, your life is gone
Yeah,
without a
yeah,
minute to just sort of say, well, wait, is this what I want, or am I just doing this because this is some direction that we've been told is the way to live?
yeah,
And there's really no way to live your life. I mean, it's a comfortable way, and it will often produce, results that will keep you fed and sheltered. But it's not this. I think we get caught up in this idea like this is the way we're supposed to live as people. But I could imagine like perhaps like some sort of parallel universe where people go about life in a totally different way. And this idea of like, kind of working your whole life for that payoff at the end of retirement. So you get to finally do the things that you've always wanted to do your whole life when you're too old and sick to do them. um, is would be like that sort of path would almost be ludicrous in that other um, dimension or parallel universe. So I think it's cool that you bring that up, just to take some time and just sort of think about where you're going instead of just like being on the kind of autopilot ride, which I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it, but just to ask yourself if it's what fits for you. So
uh,
I
that
guess you learned a lot that way, and you came back to school now motivated instead of just kind of going along with the flow.
I think we should add like a huge break each 5 years.
Hmm.
because our brain aids routing, you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's not possible to do that, but I think we all should have that break, no matter what. We will feel rejuvenated. Well, uh, I will try not to say words I don't know how to say.
Well, so my job as the high school teacher has sort of like a built-in timeout. It's every summer. We get the month of July and August off from work, so we're not teaching. And it's extremely valuable because I think, at least for me, it is like pretty emotionally draining. And sometimes, you kind of deal with some of the same problems over and over again. And then you deal with issues that are just, beyond your control. That, like, if you have a kid that's just growing up in a really horrible situation, sometimes, you know, it's really hard to deal with, and just watch like some of these situations really affect the kid. Of course, you get like the situation where, like, here and there where like they rise above it, and there's a lot of success stories, but all of that does take a toll, and we get those 2 months every year. And for me, it is like a period of like kind of soul searching, and it's a timeout, it's a break. It's almost like a long period of meditation in some aspects. And it allows me to sort of like reassess where I'm going with my teaching and everything, really, and just make sure I'm still okay with the path I'm on, and I'm still okay with the direction I'm going with. And I'm able to like come back feeling refreshed and excited again about what
Exactly.
I'm doing.
By that time, I was much more spiritual than I am today because mm, my routine doesn't allow it, or I did a little bit. But when I was 19, 20, that friend who gave me the opportunity to go to the UK suggested me a book that it would become the my one of my favorite books ever. Maybe you know it. It's called Celestine Prophecy from, well, I don't remember the author, but it talks about
What was that title again? I'm sorry.
Celestine Prophecy
Okay, I don't know. Maybe
from
we'll
James
put it up
Redfield,
on
and
James Redfield.
and this book basically talks about when something inside of you tells you that you should go left instead of right,
Hmm.
and when you look at something and you see a sign, or when you think in someone and that person telephones you or gives you a call, this
Yeah.
book is all about that, and it makes you feel that the life is actually magical, and by that time it made all the sense, and I loved it, and right now when I look back and I connect the dots, everything makes sense. Some
Yeah.
things that you wanted to 10 or 15 years ago, uh, you ended up doing that path, but you didn't know where you going to, but the destination was your dream, and that's beautiful, and that's inspiring.
I like that a lot. I think back to some of the things I've wanted to do with my life throughout my life. And, I can take it all the way back to being a kid and wanting to play like Major League Baseball. And, thinking about it now, I mean, I just don't want to play that much baseball every single day for half the year. And then I'm training for the other half. Like, I don't, as much as I loved it, I never loved it that much. and they take it to like playing in bands and wanting to like make it big, whatever that means anymore. I'm talking about like in the '90s when you still like got record deals and things like that. But I think about that now and like I don't want to be on the road all of that time. I don't want to be struggling to put out a hit all the time and worried if it's going to, chart and sell and those sorts of things. Like those, although as much as I thought I wanted it, I'm think I'm much happier where I wound up. And it's like you said, connecting the dots, looking back makes a lot of sense. And I think I definitely got to check out that book, and I'll put it in the show notes because it sounds pretty cool. I like that kind of thing. Like, and what you said, like, there's sort of like a magic. I know that, like, intellectually, if I think about it, like you said, like maybe you think about the friend and then they call, right? And you're kind of like, wow, that's like a sign, it's a message, there's something important to that. But I know that most of the time I think about a friend, they don't call. And I don't really like count that, you don't like quantify that. You don't write that down. Oh, they didn't call, they didn't call, they didn't call, they didn't call. And then, the one time they do call is maybe like, who knows, 1 out of 100 or something. And you realize that it's not really, it's just sort of coincidental. But I like having a little magic in my world. I like leaving it a little unexplained. Personally, I think it just makes it more exciting than just kind of letting everything have an explanation all the time. I guess like I don't always need to know why. I don't always, as much as I love to like study things like that. There's something nice about just kind of the wonder of it all. So I think I might be into that. Just for, I don't know how else to put it. I like a little magic in my life. I like a little possibility. And I know that's all in my head.
When I feel this magical event in my life, I feel that I'm connected to the matrix,
Yeah.
And I'm not just a zombie walking back and forth in my daily routine, and that gives me pleasure.
Some of my most happiest feelings are when I realize that I'm a part of everything. I'm not this separate entity, that's just like contained within my body, that like I'm connected with everything. I'm part of the universe. I'm part of this. I have an effect on that. And the idea that when you kind of look at things close enough with a microscope, that you see there's almost like no real borders. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's just like there's no like edge to you really. It's just little molecules, and like most of our molecules are, or now I'm probably using the wrong terminology here, but most of what makes us up as people is empty space. And there's so much, like even solid objects, like when you get close enough you realize there's a lot of empty space here.
You are making me remind of a TED talk with a neurosurgeon who had a stroke, and she basically described her stroke in with the perspective of a neurosurgeon, and it's magical because basically with with her stroke, her left side of the brain was shutting down intermittently, so
Mm-hmm.
only the right side of the brain was actually working all the time. And when that happened, she was like in acid, and everything was beautiful.
So just to clarify my understanding, because I always mix it up, the right side of the brain, that's the more creative side, correct?
Yeah,
And the left is logic, LL. So
yeah.
kind of how I always remember. Okay, so every once in a while, her logical side would just check out, is what you're saying.
I will
Or would,
I will pass the link,
okay.
and you should add to the cast notes as well, because this is something. At the end of this talk, my skin shivers. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but
Yeah.
the message that is passed is uh, forget your left side, you know, and
Yeah.
connect yourself to the universe. And
Hmm.
this is said by a neurosurgeon, which is a person which probably will be very factual and very rational, you know.
Right. Science backed. Huh. I always think that when you're being creative, it's really important to shut off that critical, logical side of your mind. That you need to let go of like judging things or being good or bad and just let the sort of happy right side of the brain play and get its ideas out. And then later on, there's a time and place for the logical side. But if you're being too sensible and logical when you're being creative, a lot of times you just shut it down as being silly or not good enough or what have you. I like that idea a lot. I'll definitely check it out. We'll definitely put it in the notes for the episode. That's cool stuff. It just, I guess, reminds me that there is like this really strong power in your brain that if you can just access it and tap into it, there's a lot of possibility. Hmm.
Definitely.
That's cool stuff. Thanks for that. I look forward to seeing that. So can I bring you back to we started talking about DRC a little bit, but I think there's still a lot to say. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely really really cool sounding synth and
Well, I've talked about a lot of myself, and but my friend, my best friend, actually, he ended up in a completely different path. So he started to learn analog electronics by himself, like auto
mhm.
learning, and then he went to Lisbon to study audio and audio engineering. Um, and he started repairing old analog synths and doing well, band recordings,
Uh-huh.
audio engineering stuff. But for DRC, I think the the, the most important things here is that he got specialized in some of the most iconic synthesizers, analog synthesizers, and we kind of merged this knowledge together. Uh, with this extremely accurate ears, and is really very picky about that detail. His sense of perfection in sound is quite remarkable. Um, with my experience in computer science and in development applications, um, well, basically, the result was has been quite it's funny because people really see something in the synthesizer in these both aspects, the sound quality and the UI and the fact that it's cross platform and works very simply in all platforms.
That sounds like a good pairing. You've got your kind of digital expertise and his analog expertise coming together. Perfect match for what you're doing.
And in between, we were still developing the synthesizer, and we were kind of what can we do to make the synthesizer more uh, um, to make people interact with the synthesizer in a funny way.
Mm-hmm.
And Rui said we could make a laser art. And a couple of months later, we found the opportunity to make the laser art. So basically, we had this event that was going to happen here in Braga. It's like an event where everyone comes to the streets dressed in white. They call it White Night, and the city council was looking for projects that could enrich the streets by during that night,
Mm-hmm.
and we created this 2 meter tall iron structure powered by lasers with 8 lasers with 8 strings of lasers, um, where DRC was being used as the sound engine, and the result was simply awesome because people would just stick to the laser harp and be there playing, especially
Yeah.
children. They found
Yeah.
it completely magical to see something that is just light creating sound.
Hmm. Now, when you play the harp, does it matter? Is there like some kind of modulation based on like where you put your hand in the string?
And no,
Does,
not yet. That's
yeah.
an old uh, goal we
Uh
want
huh.
to achieve. Um, we 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 had to deal with some other problems first, but no, right now we don't do that yet, but we will.
Yeah, it's a really cool, like futuristic looking thing you guys have going here. It looks like quite a lot of fun to play around with. So you guys are still working on that. It's like a work in progress, I guess.
Well, this is not our priority,
Yeah.
because it takes a lot of time, and basically, Rui lives in Lisbon and I live in Braga. We are separated like 300 and almost 400 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 4 hour distance, and we we basically have our other goals. He's there doing his own audio band recording and synthesizer repair, and I'm here working at Imaginando all day. So basically, when I give more attention to app development and support and all that, but sometimes we have some projects going on with the ARPA. It has been requested a few times for brand activation events, and we have spent like 10 days in an event. BMW has recently turned 100 years, so they basically um, they they rented the harp for from us to be next to a 7 Series BMW
Ah, cool.
with laser headlights.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And we also had the laser harp at a flagship store opening in Porto, um, and basically we are when that happens we always end up doing something new for the app. For instance,
Hmm.
there is one feature that is not quite well documented in the RC's manual, but it came up from a necessity while we were working with the ARP in such an event. I'm not sure if you have already asked yourself what the hell means the connection item in the menu of DRC in the VST plugin.
Yeah, it
But
always says no connections available.
Yeah, but if you use your mobile device and have it
Uh-huh.
connected to the same network, there will be a connection there. Uh,
Okay, so you open up the app on both,
well,
I guess.
yeah, you can use the mobile version as a remote control for the desktop version, and the same happens with the ARP. I can use the mobile version of TRC to remote control the ARP, so I can fine tune the sound ARP is playing with the iPad using the RC
Uh-huh.
interface. And this just got out from the necessity, We were like, the event was 10 days long, and we had to be there like from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening, and it was painless. It was a huge pain. So we had to find ways of being uh, entertained,
Yeah. That's cool. Those are usually the best features, right? The ones that come out of that necessity that like you're using it and you say, "Oh, I need this," and then you work it in.
and it ended like in a really cool feature because, well, I think there are a few synthesizers that have this feature already, but not many. So
Hmm.
you can basically use the like the mobile gadget as an extension to your soft synth on the computer.
Right. That's cool. So it's very futuristic looking, that's for sure. It looks like sort of out of this world, almost like it was dropped off from some other planet or something. I think the one thing I really like that you guys have done with DRC. By the way, what does DRC stand for?
Well, in electronics, you have RC, um, resistor capacitor, like um, is usually a filter is done with a resistor capacitor. So
Okay.
we have added the D as digital
Okay.
resistor capacitor.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, it's very common in the electronics world to for the use of RC,
Hmm.
and since everything in DRC tries to, for instance, in an analog synthesizer, the ADSR envelope generator, they were they were they were they were implemented using the charge and discharge of capacitors. This is done through an RC combination.
Mm.
We try to emulate this in the RC.
Okay, cool.
When you use the envelope generator, you get exponential curves. Um, I think all of these details uh, contribute to the DRC sound because um, I've DRC was my first synthesizer, and as I told before, this has been a huge uh, main goal for me as a programmer to know how to make a synthesizer. And I've looked to code before and other books, and I've seen some ways of doing it. And for instance, for envelope generators, most of people just do straight lines. Like
Hmm.
you start here, you end here, and you have a straight line, and then you do the decay, and okay, it's going to be a straight line from year to year. But all these subtle details affect the sound a
Yeah.
lot. Well, I'm not saying we were the first to do this, of course not. There are plenty great synthesizers in the whole world, but I think we have added some little details that make a difference.
Yeah, all those little details and that attention to it adds up to an overall sound and product, which is cool. I really like the ability, and I think this is something that I'd like to see more of just in general in everything, software, apps. I love how you can work on your patch on your iPad or your phone and then go into the plugin version on the computer and have your patches transfer nice and easy. That I don't know of too many things that are doing that yet. And you see it once in a while, I guess, but it's so nice that you can, it just gives it more of a usability factor that I can sit here on, when I'm not able to actually be making music on the computer, and I can even just be on the phone and kind of programming synthesizer patches. It's a lot of fun. I think that's something that sets you guys apart, because there's certainly no shortage of synthesizer apps out there.
Yeah, when we were doing DRC, we wanted to add something really unique, and yeah, as you say, there are thousands.
Yeah.
How can you be unique? And in this case, we were trying to. Our main goals were that we had a nice sounding synth, and we had it for all platforms, from Android to desktop, because there are a lot of apps, but for iOS, not for Android. And I always question why. There are great Android devices, and despite the fact that Android has some issues with performance, well, it's getting better, but it doesn't make sense. You can have the exact same engine and sound on all platforms. So we set that as a goal as well, and the cloud patch syncing system, while it's not yet perfect as I would want it to be, I see so many possible things coming up with this, but I haven't the time yet to implement them.
Sure.
I think this is really useful for someone that is simply on a train or subway or bus, messing with the sound, and then when he gets home, because I don't know, Brian, you seem to deal a lot with the music technology. Do you have a complete workflow on iOS apps?
It's something I'm working on.
It's not easy, right?
No, it's not. And honestly, I do have a little joke that I always say when people ask me what I use my iPad for, and I always say downloading apps. Because that seems to be like the main thing I do. I'm very excited to explore the new Audio Bus 3 that just came out. I think what I need to get that workflow right is something I don't have to set up every single time I want to use it. And that's definitely a bottleneck for me. An app like yours or any synthesizer app, I guess, would work in this situation, where I can use it as sort of like a one-off thing to record into my computer. That's fine, and I do that often. Or if it's just, say, a MIDI controller that's controlling usually something else in my computer, those are nice, and I get some use out of those. But as far as like a self-contained music-making device on the iPad, I find that just the kind of setup between the different apps, the interaction between the apps is always just a little bit clunkier than I care to get involved in. And I spend a lot of the time just trying to figure out how to get everything talking to each other rather than making the music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are definitely some apps that are a lot of fun just on their own, and something like Sampler or even like Core Gadget are really nice on their own. But I think I'm really looking forward to the day when I can have like this seamless connection between everything, and I can run, DRC through my, various effect apps and record it in somewhere on the iPad, and then it's all right there under my fingertips. I'm hopeful that Audio Bus is going to give me some of that functionality, but I haven't explored it. So when I'm using the iPad to do music, it's usually an app on its own, interacting with the computer somehow. That's usually how it goes for me. So as far as on its own, just the iPad making music and producing whole songs on it, that doesn't happen too much for me.
At the moment, I'm trying to. Well, I forgot to say that in the sorry. When
That's
I start doing this app development thing, I kind of lost something really important, which is making music. I ended up developing much more than I make music. And I'm trying to reestablish my music making process again, instead of just developing, because it seems like I lost a bit myself in the process,
Oh, definitely.
So one of my main goals for the following months is to have a new update on LK, um, that allows you to sequence clips, just like Ableton does, but with MIDI. I'm trying as well to get some Volcas, because they are small and very self-contained, and make LK to control a set of Volcas, and even another instance of DRC running in background, and 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 make that process easy,
Yeah.
because there are many great apps, but they are not intuitive. You, you. I personally lose a lot of time trying to understand how they work. For instance, ModStep does already what LK will try to do in a few months, but I I I can't I can't simply use it because it's complicated. Uh, I don't find it intuitive,
Yeah,
and
ModStep is pretty amazing looking, and I have bookmarked in my browser like a whole set of tutorials that they have that I need to watch, because the times I've tried to use it, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, and um, I guess it's like you said, like actually making music, right? Like the more you're trying to learn new software, the more you're trying to learn new things, and then when you're spending all your time just trying to figure out why these aren't connecting properly, it's it's enough to suck out the inspiration from you. And often I find like I just don't have enough time. It's so precious to get the time that if I'm trying to always learn how to connect things or learn how to use something, I'm not making any music.
I think that's one of the great advantages of DRC, is that you can start doing amazing sound in just a matter of seconds, um, because you don't spend too much time learning about the synthesizer itself and how do you use the controls.
It
Well,
is laid out very sensibly. Um, like even when you switch between like your oscillators, it's just like the one part of the page that changes. filter's still there, and you've got like a nice like kind of tab system, almost like a web browser, where it's really just one screen, but you can change what's being showed in each section. It's very clear, and sometimes things get caught up in maybe all kinds of fancy graphics and pictures and images and colors, and you have to like learn how to interpret that into what you know.
Yeah.
But this seems like I can just see what everything's doing nice and easy on DRC, which is one of the things I like about it, because I'm not going to spend a half an hour scratching my head trying to understand what I'm doing.
We are also working on a update to TKFX, which was actually the first app released when I started the company. It will.
This is the tractor effects, right?
Yeah, but now it will be a complete tractor controller.
Okay. Kind of like LK is to Ableton Live.
LK turned itself in something bigger, in the sense you can also control MIDI at any time. Mm-hmm. You can switch each model to live mode or MIDI mode. In live mode, you are always tied together with Ableton Live. In MIDI mode, you have the ability to choose a MIDI device which can be an iOS app running on the background, or a USB MIDI interface connected to your mobile device. But right now, LK is not there yet, because it lacks one important thing: the ability to sequence something. And I think when LK has the ability to sequence things, it will be a huge step, because once again, LK is very intuitive and easy to learn, and I have that kind of feedback every day. And for people dealing with new apps every day, I think it's a huge difference.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, when you download something new, like, it's nice when you can just know how to use it, as opposed to now I've got to go to college for it.
And this new version of TKFX adds a new module that is tech controlling, and now it's not just a effects controller anymore. You can do the same, the two things, but really well and very effectively. And the other day I was coming from Lisbon to Braga in by train, and the train internet was so bad that I just gave up on the internet. So I had a chance to test the new version of TKFX while I was riding on the train, and it was awesome. Even I was not using like I was using just the built-in sound card, and I couldn't use the headphones queue, but simply using the tracks synced to master, I could spend like 1 hour mixing incredibly well. So I think this will be a huge step further.
Nice. Well, that's great when you lose yourself in it like that. And there's a good lesson in there about shutting off the internet to get your work done, right?
For sure.
Get rid of those distractions. So, yeah, you've got a lot of great work that you've done, and I really do appreciate how you're, as you talk about it with me, you're honest about where the product is, where you want to take it, and I don't feel like you're just kind of giving me a commercial for what you're doing, and it just, I think, highlights something that I've noticed, in working with you, that you're always like striving to improve it. You're always trying to figure out another way to make it more usable, more available, and fun, really, and to improve the quality. So, I mean, I've seen LK is, grown tremendously since it's first started. And the same I could say about DRC too. Like the way we've now got the ability to sync our patches is, again, that's a real nice feature. That's a real like useful feature for people to have. I'm definitely very happy to hear all this about your work.
Well,
Um,
the company is still very, very small. Right now I'm just one doing all this. I have recently, in the last like 3 months, I've a musician working with me all time, but it doesn't do development. He tests, he writes documentation, and he gives feedback, and and
mhm.
and this is being very important for me because, as I said before, I'm not a musician, especially now. I'm mostly the the developer and everything in the business, but not a musician, you know. And but this guy is a musician. He has like 3 or 4 projects. Um, and for instance, one day he let me, or he tried to load his live um, performance, Ableton Live project for a 1 hour concert of one of his projects. Something I would never do because I don't have a project which needs 50 tracks or 25 tracks and 50 scenes, you know?
Yeah.
And this is a lot of clips to load. And when he did that on the current version of LK, I felt embarrassed because the grid won't move. So
Mhm.
right now, LK is not yet a pro software. I know there are people using it all around the world as in a pro environment, professionally in the stage, but seeing that made me feel that there is so many things to be improved and to take it to a next level, and that's definitely the where I want to take LK now, to the next level.
Yeah, nice. It's great to have that, you know, uh, that experience of someone else showing you how it's working in their setup. And then I think there's a lot of apps out there that get, you know, approved for the store and then just sort of left. And it's just like, well, this is what it is. And, no attention to updating it and trying to strengthen it. And it is like refreshing and nice to see that that's something you've got a lot of passion behind to make sure it can be everything that you want it to be, really, I guess.
It's from it's not easy to have an app on the store. When you see the first month of sales, you you can easily get disappointed, you know, after
Yeah.
so many months of work, and then you put it online and you see uh, no one has downloaded it or no one has bought it, and you see months of work going down the drain. This encourages someone easily.
Hmm.
Maybe that's because I'm stubborn
Okay. That's a
a
good
lot.
quality.
So I don't give up easily on making things better.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's, I think, a trait you see in a lot of people that have success at what they do is just a stubbornness, a determination. Definitely helpful quality. All right. This has been a really great conversation and eye-opening for me, and some really interesting points we've talked about that you've brought up about, like, even just like life direction and, finding work that is valuable to you and self-discovery and having the courage and the support to take that dive and go work on something that you believe in, that you think will be fulfilling for yourself. because it is pretty easy to stay in a comfortable position, but sometimes that position isn't as fulfilling as maybe we want, and it takes some bravery to search out and look for the meaning and the purpose rather than just the getting by. So I commend you on that, and thank you for sharing all that stuff with everyone else.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna start wrapping this up. Is there any place you want people to check out your work? I mean, obviously there's Imaginando.pt.
Yeah.
That's IMAGINANDOPT.
Maybe it's better to put a link on.
I will. I definitely will.
One funny thing I see in my Google search analytics is that many people search for Imaginando. Like it's different. It's misspelled, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot of hits on that. But yeah, feel free to try all our apps because they are free to download, and they work for 7 days long. If they don't work, contact us. We will be happy to help. Sometimes shit happens.
Yeah, sometimes it does. But yeah, that's a great thing that you guys are doing too, the free trial. Because I mean, you know, sometimes you're buying an app and you're just like, I don't even know if this is gonna be good. And how often I've bought apps and just been completely disappointed with is you know, it's a shame, but like it shows, like, I guess again, like a nice confidence in your product and a determination to make something good by saying, "Hey, look, you can try this out." And
yeah, from the sales perspective, it's difficult because you lose all those impulsive buys, you know.
yeah,
But in the end, I think I would prefer to have really committed buyers, which right now are all of them, because everyone who buys knows exactly what is buying,
right,
and we don't have huge sales or revenue, and this takes a lot to grow in scale. You know, I'm dealing with this for 3 years, almost 3 years, and it's really hard to make a business only from mobile apps. It's really hard. I think there are so many players in the market, which turns this really difficult. Too much buzz going on, and you need to make yourself appear in the middle of so many things. So it's hard, but our buyers are committed buyers, and
yeah,
at least I feel happy for that.
yeah, and it's I can understand the temptation to want to capitalize on those impulsive buys and just, you know, haha, gotcha, you bought my app, whether you like it or not. But it is a noble pursuit, I will say, that you are willing to let people have a full understanding of what they're getting before they get it. And 7 days is a nice amount of time to like understand if you're going to actually use it and how it's going to fit into your particular workflow. It's quite generous, I'd say. Well, it has been a pleasure. And I really do look forward to some of the stuff you guys come out with next. And those updates sound like a lot of fun. And I will, you know, I feel very happy personally recommending DRC as something that, you know, people definitely try it out. I mean, no doubt. But it becomes a lot of fun when you put it together with the desktop version, and then you have it as a, you know, VST audio unit inside of your DAW, and then you also have the same exact sounds on the iPad and it's easy to just go back and forth between the two. A feature I wish a lot of the apps I use and a lot of the synthesizer virtual instruments I use, I wish they had. It would be a lot of fun to just, for instance, if I could open up my iPad and work with, like, say, a sampler like in Ableton Live and then open it up in Ableton Live. But you've done that at least with DRC, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, so you have a great rest of your day. We'll say our goodbyes on the show, and then we'll wrap it up off the air, all right?
Thank you for the invitation, Brian. It was my pleasure.
I'm really happy you took me up on it. It's great talking to you finally, and enjoy the day. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Again, it's Imaginando, IMAGINANDO.PT. Some really cool apps and just some great work in general. Definitely look at the Harper Laser. It's really cool stuff too. So thanks again and have a great day.